quarter mile doesn't care about your press release. Detroit built two weapons in the 1960s that scared their own boardrooms. One carried a Mopar war crest. The other wore a Corvette badge over a secret it was never supposed to reveal. GM told the public the L88 made 430 horsepower. That was a lie. Chrysler told the NHRA the Hemi made 425. The sanctioning body banned it anyway, because they knew. These two engines never got an official head-to-head. Detroit made sure of that. We're fixing it right now. One winner, one verdict, no hedging. Let's go back to 1966. Chrysler had already been through the wars. The 426 Hemi had debuted at Daytona in 1964. Richard Petty won. Then Chrysler won the next 5 races. NASCAR panicked and banned it after just one season. Banned from NASCAR. That's not a marketing slogan. That is a governing body formally declaring your engine too dangerous to compete. Chrysler's engineers didn't scale it back. They put it in street cars. The street Hemi ran dual Carter AFB 4-barrel carburetors sitting on a cross-ram intake. Compression 1025-1. Solid lifters, 4-bolt mains. Chrysler rated it 425 horsepower. Hot Rod Magazine dynoed a 1966 Hemi-powered Coronet. It made 470 at the flywheel. The official number was theater. Torque was the headline nobody wanted to read in an insurance office. 490 pound-feet at 4,000 RPM. The NHRA ran it in superstock, then promptly built a separate class just to contain it. Because when a Hemi Plymouth showed up at your regional meet, you didn't race it, you watched. Now cross the country to Bowling Green, Kentucky, and a decision GM made in a conference room that almost nobody knew about. In 1967, General Motors officially banned factory racing support, the AMA agreement, no factory-backed race programs, clean hands. But Zora Arkus-Duntov didn't get that memo, or he got it and filed it in the trash. Zora was Corvette's chief engineer, a Belgian-born racing obsessive who had driven at Le Mans. He had no intention of letting GM go soft. The L88 option code was his answer, available on the 1967 Corvette, priced at $947, more than some entire cars. GM officially rated it 430 horsepower. Every engineer in the building knew that number was fiction. The real output was north of 550 horsepower. Some estimates put peak race-prepped L88s at 580. Why lie? Because if GM admitted the real number, the insurance industry would have detonated, and the government was already circling. So they filed it under 430 and hoped nobody in Washington could read a dyno sheet. The L88 had a 12.5-to-1 compression ratio. That number matters. Premium pump gas would detonate in it. GM's own order sheet warned buyers not recommended for street use. It required 103-octane racing fuel. You could not daily drive this car. No radio, no heater, lightweight fiberglass hood with a functional cold air scoop. This was a race car with a VIN number. GM sold 20 of them in 1967. 20. It wasn't a production car. It was a factory sleeper with plausible deniability. Now we have both machines in focus. Let's put them on the same piece of asphalt and talk real numbers. The 426 Hemi, 426 cubic inches. Dual quads, 490 pound-feet of torque, street legal. Pump gas. Any Dodge or Plymouth dealer could order you one. The 427 L88, 427 cubic inches. Single Holly, 850 CFM double pumper. 103 octane minimum. 20 units. Not street legal in any practical sense. Wait, this is where the L88 draws blood. A 1967 Corvette coupe with the L88 tipped the scales at 3,035 pounds. A 1966 Plymouth Belvedere with the street Hemi, 3,475 pounds. That is a 440-pound difference. On a drag strip, that is a full car length. The Corvette chassis was also purpose-built for this. Independent rear suspension, better weight transfer. The Plymouth was a B-body sedan platform with a nuclear engine dropped in. On paper, the L88 should win. Lighter car, more theoretical horsepower, better chassis dynamics. But the drag strip doesn't care about theory. Car Craft magazine ran a stock 1966 Hemi Plymouth through the quarter in 1966, 13.8 seconds at 104 miles per hour with a street tune on pump gas. That's bone stock, factory air cleaner, factory exhaust, factory tune, 13.8. A Hemi Belvedere with slicks and basic prep, header swap, tuned carbs, nothing exotic, ran 12.8 at 111. That's what basic hot rodding did to this engine. Now the L88. Road and Track tested a 1967 L88 Corvette, quarter mile, 13.4 seconds at 109 miles per hour, stock on race fuel. Faster than the stock Hemi, but it required 103 octane fuel that a regular driver couldn't source at a Shell station in 1967. Here is where the argument gets real. The Hemi ran 13.8 on 91 octane pump gas available at any corner Texaco. The L88 needed aviation-grade racing fuel to hit 13.4. Give the Hemi the same quality fuel and the same prep, and the time slips shift. Former Chrysler engineer Tom Hoover, the man who designed the Hemi, said publicly the engine had 30 to 40 horsepower left on the table with optimized fuel. 30 to 40 horsepower from the man who drew the combustion chambers. At Le Mans in 1967, L88 Corvettes entered the GT class. One ran, one retired, the one that finished placed 10th overall at Le Mans. That is a legitimate result on the world's hardest circuit. But Le Mans is not a drag strip. A sustained 8,000 RPM high-speed circuit favors the L88's architecture. The quarter mile is a different animal. On a drag strip, torque wins the argument. The Hemi's 490 pound-feet arrives at 4,000 RPM. The L88 peaked torque at 5,200 RPM. When that tree drops and you're launching at 2,500 RPM, the Hemi is already in its power band. The L88 is still building. The Hemi also had something the L88 didn't, a proven, tested, brutalized drag racing legacy. By 1967, the Hemi had been winning national events for 3 straight seasons. Don Nicholson, Ronnie Sox, Dick Landy, these men ran Hemis professionally and knew where every tenth of a second lived in that engine. That institutional knowledge does not show up on a spec sheet. The L88 program had no such depth in 1967. It was new. It was secret. The men who knew it best were still figuring out its ceiling. So here is the verdict, and I am not hedging it. On equal fuel and equal preparation, the only fair comparison. The 426 Hemi wins a quarter-mile drag race against the 427 L88 in 1967, not by a car length, probably by 0.3 of a second, but it wins. The torque advantage at low RPM, the proven launch characteristics, and the weight penalty offset by that 490 pound-feet wall. The Hemi owns the first 330 feet of the track, and that lead doesn't evaporate. The L88 is the faster car from 100 miles per hour upward. If you ran this race on a mile-long runway, the Corvette wins. At a quarter mile, the Hemi doesn't give it the chance. 0.3 of a second. At 110 miles per hour, that is 48 feet. That is the distance between a Hemi bumper and a Corvette grille at the finish line. The Hemi by a decisive margin. Now here is what Detroit did not want to happen next. By 1968, the insurance industry had declared war on high-performance cars. A 16-year-old could insure a Corvette for the same rate as his father's Buick because nobody had built the actuarial tables yet. Then the actuaries caught up. Rates tripled on anything over 400 horsepower. The muscle car era had a clock on it, and it was ticking. GM responded to the L88's existence by making it even harder to buy. In 1968, they restricted it to Corvette only, required a competition license for purchase in some states, and actively discouraged dealers from ordering it. 1968 saw 80 L88s built. 1969, 116 units. Then it was gone. GM killed the option code after 1969, citing emissions and corporate policy. Total L88 production across 3 model years, 216 cars. You could fill a single dealer lot and have space left over. The Hemi ran until 1971. federal emissions regulations and the insurance hammer combined to strangle its compression ratio down to 9.0 to 1 by its final year. The engine that made 470 horsepower in 1966 made 425 on paper, and considerably less in reality by 1971. Both engines died the same death, not beaten on the strip, regulated off the street. What did that do to the car's value? Everything. A numbers-matching 1967 L88 Corvette sold at Barrett-Jackson Scottsdale in 2014 for $1,045,000, over $1 million for a car GM originally sold for under $5,000 and actively tried to hide. A documented matching numbers 1966 Hemi Plymouth Belvedere 2, the same configuration that ran 13.8 at the strip, sold at Mecum Indy 2022 for $467,500. The Corvette commands a higher auction premium, partly rarity, 216 total units versus thousands of Hemi Mopars, partly the mystique of the forbidden factory racer. But rarity is not the same as superiority. 216 L88s exist because GM ran from the fight. Thousands of Hemis exist because Chrysler committed to it. The NHRA rule changes that followed the Hemi era created the entire modern pro-stock class structure. The Hemi forced the sanctioning body to rethink factory-based racing from the ground up. Every pro-stock rule, written after 1968, has a Hemi-shaped shadow behind it. The class exists because one engine made the old rules irrelevant. The L88's legacy runs through every endurance Corvette that followed. The C5R, the C6R, the C8R at Le Mans in 2023. Zora's blueprint never actually disappeared. But on a drag strip in 1967, the Corvette was a guest in Hemi territory, and the Hemi did not extend a warm welcome. Let me give you the final 3 dimensions of this verdict, because this is where it gets definitive. In a quarter-mile drag race on equal preparation and equal fuel, the 426 Hemi wins. Low RPM torque, proven launch mechanics, and 57 years of time slips confirm it. In a sustained high-speed race, Le Mans, a long oval, anything over a half mile, the L88 wins. Its architecture was built for that environment. It proved it in France, and as an engineering achievement, given the political constraints Zora was working under, banned factory support, forced to lie about output, only 216 units, the L88 might be the more impressive act of defiance. But defiance does not equal victory at the strip. You were there at every car show, every driveway argument, every magazine shootout that never quite settled it. Now you have the receipts. The drag strip doesn't lie. Neither do we. Which one would you have lined up against? The Hemi Plymouth or the L88 Corvette? Drop your answer below. If you own one of the 216, we want to hear from you. And if this settled a debate you've been having for 20 years, share it with the person you've been arguing with.